Okay, guys, I went to a local match this weekend and kind of an outlaw match. It's at a local club that we have here in the area. It's a real nice club. I like shooting there. Awesome people. What they did on the match was they had basically a combination of USPSA targets, some steel challenge type events, and then some accuracies type shooting, and then just basically some speed shooting. Real nice, fun match. One of the guys there was having a major issue with his pistol. Basically, he was shooting it and it would lock up. The round would go into battery and it would lock up the gun. Now, this video is not to talk bad about this gentleman at all. You know, based on what I was hearing, he's a fairly new reloader. You know, we all have to start somewhere, and you know, reloading can be dangerous. A lot of times when people get into reloading, they're not for sure on how they should do something, you know. And the biggest mistake that I see when people get into reloading, or when they're first reloading, is they assume that all bullets are the same size. Even when if you take a 9mm 124 grain bullet, a lot of people assume that all 9mm 124 grain bullets are pretty much the same size, and they're not. You know, as I showed in a video in the past, they're really not. Okay, so I took some notes here because you know this is very important. I don't want to see anybody go out there, you know, new to reloading and get hurt, and that's basically what it's about. Okay. What would happen is when the gun would go into battery, his bullet would get stuck, and then the gun would not, it would basically just lock up the whole gun. And I'm going to tell you, that's happened to me before. I made a video, and I would like for him to go watch this. It's pretty much just talking to him, but you know, everybody can go check this out because this is something that everybody can learn from. Go watch. It's called the Reloader Do Tip. Chamber check your reloads. Chamber check your reloads. I made that video about 4 months ago, and if he would have watched that video, if he would have known about that video or had access to that video, it might have helped him. It might have saved him. He actually got injured. I wasn't on the stage when the first time it happened, but he basically hurt his hand real good, and he also had a piece of bullet or shrapnel go into his leg. So it was not a good deal. You know, we don't want to see people get hurt, and he was trying to do the right thing. It's not like he was, you know, intentionally misloading his bullets. He was, you know, he was trying to get the appropriate powder for his bullets. He was using the light loads, you know, for the powder that he was using. But when I looked at the case, there was a couple things in there that, you know, this is important. Okay, first of all, you know, he's loading on a Dillon press, so hopefully y'all can see the Dillon press in there. We all know that I film this on my phone, so sometimes I can't see. He was talking about his setup. When you're reloading on the Dillon press, even I've had it where I was reloading a bunch of rounds, and then maybe about the 300, 400 round mark, one of my dies came a little bit loose. And with that die coming loose, it wasn't seating the bullet, you know, where it needed to be seated. And so it was causing all kinds of problems. You know, your dies can come loose. So now I've gotten to a real good habit about every time that I have to re-put primers in, you know, my primer tube only holds 100 primers, or any time that I have to load cases into the machine, I check and make sure that those dies are still in the right spot. They're still secure. Also, make sure that when you're setting up your dies, you know, just basically what I'm telling him to do is just start all over. You know, start at the beginning of what potential problems could have been. Make sure that you're getting good cam over action. If your resizing die is not going on completely resizing the case, and you're only resizing the top half of the case, you could have, you know, some issues. And I'm not saying that was the problem, but he was getting some case bulge at the bottom. I think that might have been some of the problem, but I don't think that would have caused the issue that he was having. And the reason I can say that is, you know, I have two Glocks here just for representation. when I reloaded these new bullets that I'm shooting currently, it shot real well out of my revolver. I mean, the groups on it were awesome. So, and how I was reloading them is I was taking my calipers and I looked up all the load data. Okay, and this one here is at 1.125 is what this one's set out. Now, normally I like them at 1.120. You know, 1.120 for a 9mm is a good all-around length. I mean, it works for, I'd say, 90% of the cases, the bullets out there. However, when I shot them out of my revolver, it was perfect. When I shot them out of the Glock, it was perfect. When I shot them out of the Kimber 1911, and that's why I want him to go back and watch that, make sure that you checking your chambers. It would lock up, you know, I would fire 5, 6, 7 shots through that 1911, and then it would lock up. And when it locked up, it didn't just lock up a little bit. You know, in that video, I kind of make it sound like it would just kind of seize the gun up, and it did. But it would lock it up so bad that I couldn't get the slide open. I would literally have to force and jam and push and just hammer it until I could get that slide to release. After doing some investigation, and you can see that on that video, I found that the bullets were too long. They were getting, the actual lead of the bullet was getting stuck in the grooves and rifling of the barrel. So now I take that same bullet, we can go to it, that's over here, and I now load those at 1085. Okay, all the load data that you're going to see is, well, that's way too short, that's way too short. And it is, but that's why the important thing is you have to chamber check your round. And if it works in one gun, don't just assume it's going to work in another. You know, I took my barrel out of my firearm at the match, and I took my round and I put it in my barrel. And then I took another guy's round and put it in the barrel. And then I took a third guy's round and put it in the barrel. And then I put his round in the barrel. And the barrel that we were using was a Lone Wolf barrel. Well, not a Glock factory barrel, but a Lone Wolf barrel. And his round was sticking way up, which tells me that they were long. And after a little bit of discussion with him, he said, well, I set them at what I had on my normal factory rounds. Well, you can't do that all the time. I mean, it sounds good in theory, but it doesn't work. You have to find the overall case length for that particular bullet. So, first thing that you need to do is you need to check your dies to make sure that your dies, that you're getting a full resize on your resized die. I mean, that's the most important. And from there, chamber check. And at the match, we chamber checked one in his, and it did go in. But it didn't go in all the way. On my Lone Wolf barrel, it was sticking out about, I would say, 1/4 of an inch. It was horrible. And what I'm saying is that's why the gun was seizing up and locking up. And you wouldn't think that jamming a bullet into the rifling like that would cause the gun to, where you literally have to just beat it to get it out, but it will. Okay, so, all right, let me read my notes here. Okay, another thing, as he said, he was just minimal flare of the case. One of the guys there who is also a great reloader, and you know, he's a real nice guy, and I like him a lot. He was saying, I was trying to explain something. He's like, well, I've never heard of that. He didn't say I was wrong. He said I would never heard of that. And I'm gonna tell you guys, I've been reloading a long time, and I've seen a lot of stuff through other people, but I've also had problems myself. Let me grab some rounds here. On 45 ACP, I was having the same problem with the case bulge. There's no way for me to put it up on camera probably, but I'll try. You can see it maybe? Some case bulge. All right. I'm going to take on another one. And you can see this one, it ripped the case. You know, I've reloaded a lot of 45 ACP in my life, and never had a problem with it. But lo and behold, out of the blue, I started having problems with my 45 ACP rounds. They were bulging. Well, the reason why they were bulging is because I was not, and a lot of people, I've read a lot of things online where people are having the same problem. The reason why mine were bulging is because I wasn't flaring the shell enough. So if you're having problems with bulging, make sure you're getting a good enough flare. Okay, well, my buddy, he was like, well, anytime that I've ever not flared a case enough, it's just basically, smash down the side of the case, or you'll get spillage. You know, you'll have it'll cut the bullet basically, and you'll have spillage running out. Yes, and that's true, you will. But sometimes the bullet will actually go in the case, you know, inside of the case. But then the farther down it goes, it tightens up and it gets what I call an accordion effect. I don't know how to explain it, but what it basically does is the bullet is inside the case, up at the top, but then as you're pushing it down, it compresses the case a little bit. And then that's where you get like an indention, or you'll get a bevel, or you'll get a bell, and you'll see it. I mean, it won't hurt the bullet at all, but it'll smash the case just enough to cause it where it won't go into the chamber. Don't know why. You know, when it first started happening to me, I was like, what is going on? Okay, so the reason I can say, well, it could be, there's so many problems that it could be. But start with your making sure your dies are set up right. You know, make sure that you're getting good cam over. Now it doesn't have to be a smash cam over, but make sure you're going completely on the resizing die. Make sure that you watch the video on chamber checking. You know that video right there will show you a lot of things about chamber checking your rounds to make sure it's safe. Make sure that you're getting enough flare, because yes, you might have enough flare where you're setting the bullet on top, but it could be smashing the case. And it's just little, 1/100,000ths of a smash that can cause a problem. You wouldn't think that it could, but that's why these 45 ACPs are sitting here, is because when I made them, it was doing something different than it ever had. Watch your seating depth though. When you start smashing these cases, like when I went from the 1.120 down to the 1.085, you're going to increase the pressure. So watch your powder. At that point, start lowering your powder a little bit. If they're saying, well, the book says to put this much as minimal, and that's what I'm using. Yes, it is, but obviously there was some discrepancy somewhere. So when you seat that bullet different, you're going to increase that pressure. So even though the book says the charge is at 5, your minimum charge is at 5 grains. Don't feel bad about going to 4.7. Now, I'm not telling anybody to do anything. I'm just trying to help this guy out because he got hurt, and I don't want to see nobody else get hurt. But when you seat that bullet different, you're going to increase your pressure. So you're going to have to drop your powder charge. So if he really was using minimal charge, and I can only go based on assumption and what he said, then he's going to have to lower that powder charge to seat those bullets different. But if they're catching in the barrel and it's seizing up that gun, I'm telling you that's what happened. How do I know? Because it's happened to me. Okay, that's how I know. How do I know that you can smash the bullet, this case with the bullet, even though it's already inside? Because it's happened to me. So watch your seating depth. Also, all of you need to watch out. When you go to a range and you see a guy shooting a Glock, and he's out there and he's shooting and blah, blah, blah. Everybody knows about the Glock smiley, okay? You have that little part of the case that it's not supported in the Glock chamber. Yes, okay, I've shot a lot of Glock reloads. Now, true, none of these Glocks here have the Glock barrel in them, but I've shot a lot of Glock reloads. Never had an issue with them. Where you got to watch it, and I promise you, when you're at a range, make sure you know the kind of people that are shooting at the range. Okay, this is important for everybody. Okay, this is my limited gun, and we're going to go over this gun one of these days. Okay, people are shooting 9mm major, okay, in race guns. They're loading those 9mm race guns to 165 power factor, 160 power factor, whatever it is, and they're running them. You do not want to use 9mm brass, after it has run through a major 9mm race gun. You don't want to use it. once they shoot that 9mm brass at a 165 power factor, the brass is still good sometimes, and then sometimes it's not. It'll you'll load it up with the minor power factor and split it. You'll load it up with a minor power factor and blow the head off of it. And the reason why is because they're putting so much pressure in that case that when it's kicking out of their gun, because their gun is made for it, and then you put it in your stock gun, it's a different animal. So watch those cases that you're picking up at the range. If your range, it has matches, some ranges don't have matches. Some ranges are just a bunch of people going out, blah, blah, blah. And there's nothing wrong with that 9mm brass. But when you go to a range and they have competitions where people are shooting 9mm major, be real wary on the brass that you're picking up, because it can cause problems. It can cause split heads. It can cause all kinds of issues. Okay, so just watch the brass you pick up. Be very careful. The reason I'm making this video is, just for everybody, safety first. If your gun locks up, don't mess with the business end. Okay, if there is a round in there and your gun is seized, this end can still hurt you. Okay, stay away from it, and don't put your hand on top and be just jerking it, because let's say that you pop it just enough to set that primer off. Okay, on my revolvers, you'll get a light primer strike, because on my competition revolvers, the primers are semi-smashed. To shoot a revolver, you got to have. Anyway, to make a long story short, you're going to get light primer strikes, and then when you come back through again, it'll go off. Well, basically, when you get that round smashed in there, you have a light primer strike happening. So when you go jerking on, you tap it just enough in the gun, it can go off. So just pay attention. When you're pulling it and you get that round stuck, get to the back and push and push and push. Make sure you pointed at a berm or in a safe direction. Make sure everybody around you is away before you go messing with it. Never, never, never do something with the business end, and never, ever put your hand over the top, because if that round goes off, it's got you. All right? Well, there's a video today. I hope it helps this guy. I hope it helps somebody else. Hopefully I had enough time on my phone here to record all this, but I do appreciate everybody watching. If you have any questions at all, just ask. There's no harm in asking. I'm not an expert, but I have had a lot of issues where it didn't work for me. When I started reloading, the YouTube and the internet wasn't around, so we had to do it through trial and error, and there was a lot of error. Okay, so I've learned the hard way. The errors happen, and the errors still do happen. So just be careful. Just be careful. But learn your gun, learn your load at it, learn your bullet, learn your powder, and before you hurt yourself. All right, guys. I appreciate you watching. Thank you.